Welcome to the Lynn Community Television Show, a program which focuses on organizations working to make their impact right here in the city of Lynn. And here with me today from the Food Project, we have John Wang, the North Shore Regional Director of the Food Project, Hazel Kiefer, the Lynn Grower, and Alex Freedman, Director of Lynn Food Fitness. Guys, I want to say thank you for coming on to the program. We're here today to talk about the Food Project, but before we get too much into the organization and its detail, let's give these guys an opportunity to explain who they are and what they do. John, let's start with you.
Cool. So I'm the North Shore Regional Director, and so part of my job and responsibility is to help supervise kind of like all the operations that are happening in the North Shore. So that's like our land site in Lynn, or all our farm sites there, also like in Beverly and Wenham, and then also supporting like kind of the growing operations, the youth development programs that are happening, and kind of community engagement that's happening.
So the North Shore area is a pretty big region to take on. You've got a ton of responsibility. We'll get to that in a little bit more in detail. So Hazel, I want to talk to you about your responsibility. You're the main grower. You also manage the markets and the seed teams. Tell us a little bit about what you do.
Yeah, so I'm the grower here in Lynn. I have a counterpart that works at our suburban farm in Beverly and Wenham. But what I'm responsible for here in Lynn is all of the distributions that come from our urban farms here, the farmers market, working with Alex to build community gardens, and sort of facilitating the youth experience on the farm. So that's curriculum and also teaching youth agricultural skills.
All right. So Alex, you're the director of Lynn Food and Fitness. How does your organization fall in with the Food Project?
Yeah, so Lynn Food and Fitness Alliance is a program out of the city's Department of Public Health, and my goal is to work with different groups around the city to pursue policy and systems change related, in particular, in this case, to food issues. So we've been working a lot with the Food Project over the last few years, especially around community gardens, healthy corner stores, as well as other initiatives currently like surveying the food landscape of Lynn.
So the Food Project's been around since, I think before the program we talked, John, since the 90s. It's been in Lynn since early 2000s. So we hear about the project all the time. I see signs for it, the Food Project. What is it? Tell us about that.
Yeah, so kind of the mission of the Food Project is to create a thoughtful and productive community of youth and adults to help build a more sustainable food system. So we kind of focus on like kind of three main areas of the Food Project. So there's our youth development, there's like our food, like growing our food, and then there's also like community partnerships and like food accessibility is like some of the areas that we focus on. So in youth, we believe that young people are active leaders. Like right now, we in terms of community, we feel, or like our mission is like diverse groups of people are connected with each other and with the land. And then around food, we just believe that everyone, no matter where you lie on the economic scale, deserves access to fresh, healthy produce. And so we tackle those three main areas with a lot of like our programming and activities and partnership that we have within our community.
So there's obviously a purpose to this. There was obviously a need that caused the Food Project to come about. So people have access to produce in their supermarkets. What's the difference between an organization like Stop and Shop versus what the Food Project's trying to do?
Yeah, I think like one of the things that we're looking at is developing kind of like win-win distribution systems. So we're looking to help build the local economy, and then also help address income inequality at the same time. And so rather than kind of cheapening the food that farmers are producing, we want farmers to make a livable wage, so it's a win for them. And then also we want community members to be able to access food which they normally wouldn't have, local, affordable, kind of fresh food. So building that local economy and then also boosting up everyone that is in it. So I think that's like one of our main themes. And then also kind of like in the youth development realm, bringing diverse groups of young people from different backgrounds to work across difference and learn about each other and the perspectives and where they come from. I think with a lot of the troubling things happening like in our communities, in the country, kind of in the world, I think that kind of work gives me a lot of hope to see that transformation and understanding and empathy towards each other.
I want to come back to you, John, talk a little bit about supply chain and where the food market would fall into it. But you just touched on an interesting subject. And farming, it's a human principle, so to say. And I truly do believe that. But today in society, a lot of people live in an inner city, and there's no means to know how to do this, nor is there a need for it. And so it's kind of like a trade that dwindles away. Hazel, I want to talk to you a little bit about the philosophy of farming. What does it mean to a human being to actually grasp this concept, understand the seasons, how the ground changes, how a seed works? Tell us how important it is to human beings to be able to grow food.
How long do you have? Yeah, I mean, wow, that's a really big question, and I think it's a big answer. I think connection to the natural world is really the main, the meat of that for me when I work with these young people who come onto our farms, because increasingly I think, and this might sound like an obvious thing to say, but I think we're increasingly, drawn in and connecting to each other even through technology. And I think technology has the potential to do some incredible things, but I think that we lose something in our modern lives, especially, in a city that's made of mostly concrete, right? There's very rare opportunities to actually touch the earth, which I think is something that humans have done for thousands of years, and we're disconnected from that. So I think on a very real level, what you touched on is a huge part of it for me, which is the cycles of the seasons, the beauty of the earth, and also the knowledge that everything that we do exists in a biosphere, that we are limited by that biosphere, and that we need to learn to understand it, respect it, and save it for generations to come. I think that's a huge part of what I hope these young people get out of being on the farm. And also knowing that agriculture in Lynn is not a new idea, right? This is something that people settled Lynn from Salem because they were running out of agricultural land.
Right.
And then industry came, and then, the industrial age, and here we are. And it's a beautiful city, and it's a city that, has an agricultural history that I think it's important to remember that it hasn't always been mill buildings.
Right. Yeah, I mean, if it comes down to it, our basic industry as human beings is the ability to go and grow food. Agriculture itself, it's the only trade that should come natural to us. And the way that you speak about what you do, Hazel, it really just shows a lot of appreciation for the work that you do. And you kind of alluded to this too, John, as the changing of the seasons and how to become more aware of your environment and your surroundings. And growing food and being involved in the agriculture process really gets you to tune into that. A lot of the kids that you work with are probably functioning on a day-by-day basis. Sun goes up, sun goes down. But maybe if they start working on a week-by-week basis, or if they start planning on a month-by-month basis, and then it starts being, they're planning on a seasonal basis, then they're developing concrete goals, and there's a point in time where they're working to hit this goal. So in between that time, they're not wasting time. They're utilizing their time in a way. We're getting real deep right now, getting deep into the wormhole. But I want to go back. I want to talk to Alex. Alex, a little bit about food and fitness. How does your line of work fall in, and how do you benefit the food project?
Yeah, so I have the unique position of being situated in city government, which is really exciting because it opens a lot of doorways to creating sort of policies and openings from city leaders that while there is a really robust nonprofit network in Lynn, it's sometimes hard to do things just in a silo, and you need those cross-cutting connections
right
across all of the different departments even. So in this role, we've done work with school gardens and creating a school garden policy with the school district that the Food Project has played an instrumental role in implementing. We've passed a community gardens policy with the Parks Commission that opened up the potential for citizens to petition to get gardens on city parkland, and the Food Project is a critical partner in the resources and the construction and the support for those gardens. And as we continue to find new ways to engage with the food system and look for those places where maybe the food project doesn't have the capacity or time to find that policy fix or find that city hall level access point, I can come in and be like, don't worry about it. Like, I'll talk to some folks, I'll connect you, and we'll see what we can do.
So this is going to be a really interesting topic for you in your line of work, nutrition. You're into that. So when you heard that you were going to be partnering with the food project, you must have thought, hey, this is going to be great for Lynn in so many different ways. Can you give us some insight on that?
Yeah, I mean, and in full disclosure, I actually used to work with the food project before this role, but I am super excited to work for them because Lynn, as a community, is so rich and diverse in all sorts of different ways, but at the same time, it's also a community of a lot of need, and especially in the food realm, there is a lot of food insecurity in the city, which directly ties into sort of public health and nutrition relating to the access that different foods people have. And I think another really interesting piece is that because it's such a richly immigrant city as well, a lot of the folks that I've worked with from other countries come from agricultural backgrounds, and then they arrive in the city and there's not really an access point for that.
Right.
So having that access to fresh fruits and vegetables is a critical way to support public health.
It's almost you could say it's a way of life, like it really is. And I mean, like when we talk about immigration, Lynn has always been a hub for immigration. It's always been a gateway into this country. And, the amount of people who come here, the knowledge that they could also afford us, how to grow this and, your soil's never going to be able to yield this much. So you should probably maybe move on from this type of product and work towards something else. I want to talk a little bit about supply chain and how, excess food gets out into the market. Recently I was reading on the Haiti earthquake and what had come about afterwards. So if you go down to Haiti today, there are hundreds of nonprofits that are all giving out excess food that the United States Agricultural Department, so to say, or these people who grow food, they had a huge amount of excess food and they want to send it down there to help people. But it's gotten to a point where people are forgetting how to grow food, and they were gaining they would have rice maybe once a week, and now after the earthquake had happened, they're eating rice 5 times a day now, and it's basically switched over their whole entire dietary restrictions. It's switched over a lot of people's ability to continue to grow agriculture, and it's really, John, shaking your head like you know a little bit about this. So I want to talk about the food project and how the food project can come and basically give citizens the ability to produce their own foods and not depend on outside sources. We were talking a little bit about the supply chain about this whole thing. So we talked a little bit about Stop and Shop, and we talked a little bit about the food project, where it falls in. You're really starting from the ground up, and pun intended, from every way, shape, and form. So you must have some understanding about this, that there are a lot of nonprofits out there that are just giving out food, excess food, and it maybe not be the best food. When it comes to a city like Lynn, let's talk about it. What are some of the best foods that we can produce here? Why do we produce them here, and how is it possible?
Yeah.
Loaded question.
Yeah, no, that's
Answer now.
That's a good question. Let me see. Some of the things that I'm picking out are, so in Massachusetts, there was an old statistic back in the late 90s. I'm not sure what the update is from now, but Massachusetts can only grow about 35 to 40% of its own food. So in terms of there's got to be a partnership between some of those, the Stop and Shops and some of the corporate food system, along with I think supplementing and partnering with local food systems. And I think that's the way to, if we're talking about Massachusetts and Lynn in general, that's a good balance in figuring out where we lie and what the ratio of that is. And then kind of back to the point about win-win distribution systems is building that local economy to develop some local food economy, to develop some food sovereignty, to be able to have some control over kind of food production and where that money is going to, and hopefully going back to the community is something I think Lynn offers a really big opportunity to look into, especially with, you know, talking about gateway cities. A lot of folks that are coming in here with like a lot of like, you know, agricultural background and knowledge that they can share with us can help boost that. So we're exploring like a lot of those like, you know, win-win distribution systems between like, you know, establishing growers that want to, you know, develop a livable wage, and then also connecting with folks that might not have access to, you know, affordable, fresh, healthy food. So those are the areas we want it to be a win for both of those, and like balance with like, you know, the realities of like, you know, we can't grow all the food that's here.
Right.
One of the other things is while it might be small in scale, kind of like our farms are used as learning platforms. So while we can only grow a certain amount of food, we can invite like, you know, like a large amount of volunteers and community members to come work with us on the land. So we look at the land as like those kind of education platforms and kind of a level playing field, because, you know, a lot of folks are getting away from farming, but it seems like now, being in this work for about 11 years, there's like a switch that's coming back. Folks are being more interested in sustainable agriculture and food justice, and just like emails and, you know, people applying like really talk passionately about that, as opposed to when we started in 2005.
Yeah, I think it gives people a sense of purpose, you know, and like a lot of people today in society, it's like, well, what can you bring to the table? Like, what's the skill that you can do? And I mean, if you can't fix cars, if you can't build buildings, if you can't, you know, fix a computer, it's like, well, I better figure out how to do one of those three things. But, you know, here we are, we're talking about farmers and livable salaries. I mean, and when I got into a trade, one of my mentors was always like, get into something that people are always going to need: food, clothing, and shelter, right? Those are the things that people are always going to need. These are the trades that you should definitely get into. And I was practicing real estate. I wasn't much of a salesman, so I ended up getting in public access. So one of the things that was really intriguing to me was learning about how hard farmers have it and the importance that they have in society. Hazel, I would like to just kind of allude this question to you. You're a farmer, so you know exactly, you know, what it takes, blood, sweat, and tears to do this trade. Why aren't farmers making livable salaries today?
Well, that's a huge question, yes. And I think, you know, if we talk about, like, I don't want to say theoretically, but if we talk about culturally, the importance that agriculture has, I think it's pretty limited. And I think, especially on the East Coast, because as John was saying, we only produce 35% of the food, right? That's an outdated statistic, but that's okay. We only produce a fraction of the food that we need to consume, right, to sustain ourselves. So I think we have a disconnect of recognizing that our food was produced by people's hands, right? Our food, all of our food was produced by a person. And we don't know that person, and that person is usually in the Midwest or in Florida or in California. Usually when we go to the supermarket, that person is not there, right? The farmer is not from Massachusetts. And so the majority of the food that we're consuming is sort of from a mystery source. And I think that's a disconnect that we're working to overcome in our work here. Sort of connecting young people with the reality of where that food came from and how it got there.
And how it got there. And then, like, I don't know if it's something that just clicks after 25, you start thinking about this stuff and they're like, I'm eating this. This is amazing. Like, I have this piece of food that is going to nourish me and give me nutrients, and be able to walk around and use it as usable energy. How amazing is that? And I think, you know, today there is a disconnect from probably the younger group of our society, and there's this just absolute demand for something right now, when I need it, and how I want it. I think the timing that goes into agriculture is one thing that keeps people away from it. They want it now and they want it quick, and it's like, who wants to go through the process and planting a seed? And there's even more stuff that you have to do before you put that seed in. You have to rip up the ground. There's a lot to it. I'm not going to tell you. I'm wearing a coat and haven't been in a farm for very long. So let's keep the show moving. So Alex, I want to talk a little bit about the youth. So what an organization like the Food Project means to the city of Lynn's youth.
Yeah, it's huge. Lynn has a really large youth population, and I think that what makes them a really powerful force in the city for engaging with those youth is that a lot of times in pop culture and in sort of old styles of thinking about ways to engage youth, it doesn't give youth much credit for having potential to do real things right now as a 16-year-old.
Right. Because it's
sort of
like, he's a kid, he can't do it. type
yeah,
of
as a
thing.
kid, like, you know, when he goes to college or when he grows up or when he whatever, the fact that we are looking at the youth in this city as a force for change and immediate good for the community is really amazing. And to be able to not discount their contributions, particularly in the realm of food, because, you know, you don't have to be a professor or a 30-year-old or whatever to understand that food matters,
Right.
and that we are all connected to that in a really fundamental way. So I think that it's a particularly valuable tool for accessing the engagement of youth, because they know, they eat food every day. They see very immediately the impact of if there is good food available or not available, what it looks like in school, what it looks like in their neighborhood, what it looks like at the bodega. Like, they're the experts on the ground because they live it every day.
Yeah. I gotta say, man, you guys are on to something. The food projects, you guys have been doing this for a while. Any continuous improvements? We got about 3 minutes left in the program. John, what can we expect to see from the food project in the city of Lynn in the future?
Yeah, I mean, one of the new things, I mean, we still have like our farmers markets, our CSAs, kind of like our community gardens. So those are some of the established pieces. What Alex was talking about before, we're in the midst of like, you know, doing some surveying about what the food landscape here is, like, you know, what are the access points for where people get food and like, you know, what kinds of food. And using that information and kind of surveying community members, we found that there's like, you know, a want of more local, fresh, healthy food. And so we're interested in looking at sites in West Lynn to like potentially, you know, start another kind of mobile market or market similar to the one we have in downtown Lynn. But yeah, we're continuing to hire young people to help partner and do this work together with. Those are our key things, I would say.
Keep it up, guys. Definitely, without a doubt. You got a good government guy here too. Alex is a big advocate for the youth and nutrition, and you know, you're living the example, leadership through example. I want to say thank you to my guests for coming onto the program. This is the food project that we've had here on the Lynn Community Television Show, and that's it for the show from the studio here at Lynn Community Television. I'm Sean Donahue, wishing you all the best.